you don't smoke. Okay. Canada has a law. I don't know if it's the whole country or just some province that cigarettes have to be sold with these graphic warning labels. I wish I had a picture. It's like it's sort of these scare labels that say, "Oh my God, this will kill you. This will kill your baby. It'll kill your neighbor's baby." And it's done to try to convince people to either not start smoking or to stop smoking. Fine. Australia has a similar policy, but instead of graphic warning labels, it just says cigarettes have to be sold in plain containers with no sort of fancy labeling, right? Just like sort of like a generic, just a box that says, here's the box and it just says cigs. Like that's all you get. There's no picture of a camel. Okay. So the Food and Drug Administration, which has the power to regulate food and drugs, has been given the power to regulate cigarettes because nicotine is a drug and a very dangerous one. Well, the nicotine is very addictive. It's the tar in the cigarettes. It's very dangerous. And so there's this proposal to introduce graphic warning labels in the United States, and there is, ever since Ronald Reagan came into office in 1981, there's an executive order that says any federal regulation that is predicted to have economic impacts of over about $100 million has to be subjected to a benefit cost analysis, just like the stuff we've been doing. And there's this huge controversy going on at the moment for the following reason. The people at the FDA economists did this regulatory impact assessment, which includes a benefit cost analysis, and they did literally they did exactly what I'm about to do with, I'm going to walk you through little supply and demand diagrams for smokers. And they literally did that. They said, here's how much reduction in smoking we think there's going to be from these graphic warning labels, and here's how much benefit we think that's going to generate in terms of long-term health benefits, and here's the cost to consumers because, you're taking away something they enjoy doing, and when you take away, when you balance these things out and do your benefit cost analysis, it looks like actually, reducing smoking is actually a pretty bad idea because people enjoy it a lot. And these are people who are actually taking behavioral economics seriously. They're just not doing it quite well enough. And so there's a response article that was written by, actually, some of the people we're going to see today, saying, no, you know what, you guys, here's the problem. You know a little benefit, a little behavioral economics, but to get this kind of policy analysis right, you actually need to know quite a lot more. So I'm going to talk about this as we go through this example. I just wanted to sort of frame it as, hey, this is not just, the first time I taught this, I thought, my God, this is this ridiculously simplistic model. I don't believe in it at all. And, as of this summer, I have this fabulous teaching case because this is, in fact, what people are doing in the real world. Okay, simple model of present bias smoking. This is going to be incredibly familiar to you. This is just an off-the-shelf, in the same way that, we teach you demand curves, and then we say, look, here's a simple model of linear demand, right? That's A, and the slope of this thing is negative 1 over B, and the model is Q equals A minus PB, and you say, my God, that's the most ridiculous simplistic model I've ever heard of, and then it turns out you get into graduate school, and that's exactly what people are actually doing in the real world. And in point of fact, I think this assumption is, in fact, baked into the FDA RIA that I'm telling you about today. So this is a similarly kind of dumbed-down simplistic model that is, in fact, but now what people are using in real-world policy analysis. Okay, so we have an immediate pleasure benefit of B, which is going to vary depending upon your mood or anxiety level. So this is, I smoke a cigarette. We're actually going to do this in units of packs of cigarettes, but let's just imagine smoking a cigarette. And I get some pleasure benefit from it in the immediate present. I get a delayed health cost C, and I'm present bias preference, present bias with beta less than 1. We'll simplify with delta equals 1. Fine, very familiar with this. Now, just to make the model work, I'm going to want some variation in B. This is a little tricky because I love to get real-world input from people who've actually experienced B, but I also know there's a lot of social stigma on smoking. So I'm going to ask this question very carefully. Raise your hand if you have at any point in time had experience with either, with smoking and possibly smoking cessation, whether or not you were successful in ceasing, whether or not you became addicted. So I don't care. I don't want to know whether you smoke now. I don't want to impose you to public censure. I just would like to know if there are people in the room who have some experience with smoking. Yeah? Okay, good. I stopped before I got started. I've experienced a lot of other of these kinds of Bs, but this is a bullet I dodged. Okay, I figured cigarettes. That's cigarettes and gambling. These are stupid addictions. Okay, so the point is that B varies depending upon your mood. Okay, some cigarettes are really worth it, and some cigarettes you're just like, man, I know the only reason I'm smoking this thing is because I'm hooked. Okay, here's the point. You've got the model. Literally, you have everything. That's the whole model of consumer behavior when it comes to cigarettes. What is the rational utility maximization rule? I'm not going to give you any hints. I just want you to what is the rule for when you should smoke a cigarette? Okay, what's the rational utility maximization rule? You can talk about it amongst yourselves if you want. Don't forget this person has beta delta preferences with beta less than 1. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and okay. So we have a lot of C's and we have a lot of D's. Somebody justify their D answer for me. Yeah. Okay, so B is in the present, not discounted. C is in the future, discounted. Smoke whenever the benefits, the perceived benefits, basically smoke whenever the net present value, the discounted total long-term value is greater than 0. Okay. Somebody who said B, a counter argument. I do mean C. Yeah.
You're asking what's the rational utility maximization rule? So D represents what they would do if they pleasure preferences, and that's not those preferences are rational. So I would see because the benefit would have to outweigh long-term costs.
Okay, so basically what you want is to say this discounting is, all we're looking at here is the irrational part of the discounting, the discounting that causes preference reversals, that causes people to regret their choices. So what we're calling rational preferences is this thing. We've set delta to 1. So in some sense, we're asking preferences of the person before the period in which they're choosing to smoke, the long-term preferences. Yeah? Okay. I like that answer. And I think that means we get to skip the next question. So the deal is you want to smoke. The correct thing to do in some sense, the socially optimal thing to do is to smoke if your rational utility from smoking is greater than 0, which implies, right, actually what it implies is that beta times B plus beta times C, this is one way to think about it. If you were thinking about if all of this was in the future and we were only capturing the rational discounting, right, we would need that to be greater than 0, which is just the same as B greater than C. Fine. Okay, so this is a normative statement. We've said this is rational, this isn't, and we've sort of adopted a normative stance, which is that we want to maximize the welfare of relative to the rational preferences, or you could say the period 0 self, the delta self. That's our normative stance. That, by the way, is not uncontroversial. There are people who say, well, who are you to take that normative stance? My answer to them, which you can quote me on, is who are you to take any other normative stance? Okay. So the point is that sometimes smoking is worth the health cost if you're really stressed out, or, I mean, apparently there are other situations in which cigarettes are quite delightful. Okay, so what is the present bias maximization rule? We already know. We got that answer. It's this, right? That's Alex's answer. Okay? You should smoke whenever that stress reduction benefit is greater. Sorry, you will smoke whenever the stress reduction benefit B, or whatever other benefit you're getting out of it, is greater than the discounted cost, given your sort of irrational beta discount.
So for the question, are we assuming that both costs are simultaneous, or costs in the future?
So the question is, are we assuming that they're both in the future? So what I was saying a minute ago is that there's kind of two ways you can think about this. You can say, look, beta's irrational. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take every other part of your utility function except beta. I'm going to set beta equal to 1. I'm going to call that your rational preferences. In some sense, your true preferences. Another way to do it, which is mathematically the same thing but conceptually different, is to say, I'm going to roll you back in time to a point at which beta is not implicated in your preferences. Okay, so that you're looking at all of this stuff from an ex ante period 0 that we've talked about before. And in some sense, since the irrationality has to do with your trade-offs between the present and the future, we've gotten you out of the irrationality zone. We've gotten you out of your beta self, and now we can say that the trade-offs that your preferences between these two future payoffs are now rational. They're discounted by, say, delta in some sense. But this is a way that we could potentially identify your true preferences, to ask you about trade-offs across future periods. Okay? Fine. So I would say, smoke whenever sort of your behavioral or irrational utility function, utility for smoking is greater than 0, and that is just this, right? B greater than beta times. Whoops, this is getting murky. It implies that. Okay? So in other words, if B is less than C, okay, that's to say, this is a time when you should not have smoked. This is a time when the long-term cost is actually greater than the benefit you got. My guess is it's probably mostly you're driving your cruiser around the strip and you're much more likely to pick up a member of your chosen gender if you have a cigarette in your mouth. It's something like that. This is in situations where you should not have smoked because B is less than C, but you do because B is greater than beta C, you're going to cause yourself harm. Right? So these are the conditions under which we say there's an internality in this market. There's an internal harm that is caused by the fact that this person has irrational time preferences. Okay? What is the portion of the future cost that the smoker ignores? In other words, what is that marginal internal cost? The equivalent of that gap between the marginal private benefit and marginal social benefit curve. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what do we have? All right, so you guys are on track. It's B. What's going on here is that when you smoke a cigarette, you incur a cost of C. But what we want to know is the difference between that and essentially the cost you sort of think that you're incurring on yourself, right? And that is beta times C. So the part of the future cost that you don't take into consideration is 1 minus beta times C. Fine. That's the marginal internality, right? So now you might look at that and say, oh my God, that is like the most simplistic and pointless modeling result I've ever seen. Could have figured that out in the restroom. And that's fine, except that it turns out we can actually use that little formula to put an actual number, okay, on that internality and start thinking about real policy analysis. Notice here that sophistication and naivete is not involved because there's no commitment device available. Okay? People try all kinds of commitment devices, and my understanding, anecdotally, is that by and large doesn't really help very much. It is my understanding that nicotine is about as hard to kick as heroin. I think I said that before. So we're talking about pretty serious addiction. Because that's supposed to be a negative. That's supposed to be minus. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Don. Okay. Yeah. Nicotine patch is a sign of sophistication. Maybe. Or vape pen. Maybe. Yeah, it could be. Is it a sign of sophistication? I have to think about that. Okay. Yeah, I guess in some sense it has to indicate some degree of sophistication because otherwise you wouldn't. Why would you choose a less? Yeah, you're giving up some of the pleasure in order to. And I don't understand the vape pen because those things just look completely dorky to me. Yeah. Why C is wrong. It is because what I asked was not the net harm that they did to themselves, but the part of the long-term cost that they sort of imposed on themselves. So just C. Okay? Okay. Optimal tax, fine. We already know this. It's the exact same rule as with the externality. If you want to get people to the optimal point, tax them, with an externality, you tax them the size of the marginal external cost. Here, you just tax them the size of the marginal internal cost, right? So set T equal to 1 minus beta times C. And here's what we get, right? So the smoking rule becomes smoke whenever your actual irrational beta discounted utility from smoking minus the tax. We're sort of assuming once again linear money utility is greater than 0, right? So that your utility from smoking is B minus beta times C. We're going to also make you pay 1 minus beta times C, and if you do the math, so that's got to be greater than 0. And if you do the math, what you get is you will smoke whenever B minus C is greater than 0, which was the rational smoking rule. So by imposing this tax, we are going to shift you to a quantity of cigarettes such that you basically only smoke them when you should, according to your true preferences. Yeah? Good? Okay. All right, the following statements are equivalent. Right, the tax changes the short-term benefit and thus changes the smoker's choices. Whoops. The tax changes the smoker's choice set and then thus changes the smoker's choices. So remember, I said a couple of things that are basically, I said something that is, so the first thing I said earlier, which is, there's two ways. Basically, behavioral economics has two clever tricks for what the beta delta model sort of suggests, two clever tricks, right? One is, hey, look, if your beta self makes bad decisions and your delta self makes good decisions, let's change what's called the choice architecture of your decisions so that your delta self gets in the driver's seat, right? So let's give you a situation where you can choose, pay money for a commitment contract of some kind. The other is to say, hey, well, look, if you're making decisions primarily on the basis of immediate costs and benefits, let's just tweak your immediate costs and benefits, okay? So that's saying this. The tax basically tweaks your short-term payoffs. So we can then, we're like, look, the part of you that thinks about the future is just damaged. If the only thing you can bring to the table is the part of you that thinks about the present, then we're going to work with that part of you. Another exactly the same way of saying that is that the tax changes the smoker's choice set, right? It is no longer an option to buy a pack of cigarettes for $6.45. Now your choice set only includes cigarettes at $6.45 plus 1 minus beta times C, okay? So we've basically reduced your choice set. Now, in some sense, that's the same as a commitment device, right? Because a commitment device basically takes choices away from you. This is another way of taking choices away from you. And in that sense, we can think of the tax as functioning like a commitment device. All right, fine. Now, again, I'm sort of part of my sort of underlying strategy here is to try to convince you that this stuff is actually not fanciful, but actually practicable. So we want to know that, where C is the future harm from smoking 1 pack of cigarettes. So we're just putting cigarettes in units of packs. So we need an estimate of C. People do this. You'll be amazed what academic economists will do for a living. This gentleman here, Kip Viscusi, is an incredibly prolific economist who works in the field of health economics and benefit cost analysis. And he's done an enormous number of studies on things like the value of a statistical life, the value of risk reduction, and in this case, the long-term health cost of smoking. Okay? So here's how he does it. He says, start with someone age 20, which is kind of, an approximation of when people typically start smoking, and then define time periods in terms of decades. So you've got the time period from 20 to 30, from 30 to 40, etc. You compute the probability of an individual dying, a smoker dying, of smoke-related death for each age range. So from 20 to 30, there's some probability you'll die of smoking-related causes, 30 to 40, some probability, etc. You compute the value of lost years of life. So if a smoker dies during their 20s, Kip Viscusi is the man to turn to if you want to know the dollar value of the rest of their life that they would have lived that as a result of smoking they don't get to live. Kip Viscusi is Mr. Value of a Life, literally. He's the global expert on the dollar value of you being on the planet rather than under it. Okay, so for each time range, for each age range, he's determined the value of the statistical life starting from 20 to 30, starting from 30 to 40, right? Obviously, if someone in their 40s dies, it's worth a lot less to society than if someone in their 20s dies, because you're losing more of your life. Although you might say kill them before they do harm. Sorry, far too much of this is autobiographical. And then you just compute the expected value of the loss of life for each person in each age range and sum them up. Okay, fine. And what did he get? He got $220 for men and $94 for women. I have no idea why it's different for men and women. I would encourage anyone who's curious about that to go read the paper, which is on DSpace. I never actually read the whole paper, so I don't know why it's different for men and women. Gruber and Kosegei, this is Botan Kosegei, and this is John Gruber, who's a very famous health economist, I think at Harvard. Used a simple method and came up with $35. Fine. Now we need an estimate of beta. We spent 3 weeks, well, at least 2 weeks, looking at studies that estimate beta in one way or another. There are plenty of others. We get estimates from lab and field between 0.6 and 0.8. Fine, let's just go with natural assumption, which is it's the midpoint. And then you just, right, so the Gruber-Kosegei estimate gets you a marginal internal cost of 1050. I don't know what I was smoking when I wrote these numbers down, but the Viscusi and Hirsch numbers get you for men a marginal internal cost of 6660 and for women 2820. Okay, that's just 1 minus 0.7 times C, right? So 1050 is 3/10 of 35, 6660 is 3/10 of 222, etc. Okay. So trust me, I say, this is no more loosey-goosey than estimates of marginal external cost for externalities. Do you guys know this thing about there's 2 things you don't want to ever see being made, right? Laws and sausages. Do you know about that? The process by which sausage is made, of course, is very grisly because you basically just put critters in a grinder. And laws are no better. And furthermore, public policy analysis is also similarly gruesome. This is the sausage factory. And we do things like this. And in point of fact, the so-called FDA economists who did this benefit cost analysis that said that smoking cessation is a bad idea, this is literally what they did. They actually quoted Gruber and Kosegei. Question. So let's look at this. I don't actually remember the methodology that Gruber and Kosegei used, but using the Viscusi and Hirsch methodology, that $222 per pack is basically saying this. If you smoke, you are causing yourself, as a function of how much you smoke, say a pack a day. If I look at people who smoke a pack a day, I can identify the increase that they are causing themselves in the probability of dying in their 20s, the probability of dying in their 30s, etc. And then I'm going to go and put a dollar value on the chunk of life you lose if you die in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. And I'm going to say probabilistically, if you're increasing your chance of dying in your 20s by 1 percentage point by smoking a pack a day, then you're basically chucking into the river. You're taking a 1% chance that you're going to lose, what do we think, 60, 70 years of life. Kip Viscusi will tell you that an entire life is worth $8.7 million. So you're saying that you're creating for yourself a 1% increase in the possibility of losing whatever, some big chunk of $8.7 million. And then we're going to, right, so that's the expected cost you're imposing on yourself. We're going to add that up over all of the different decades in which you're increasing the probability that you'll die. Sum that all up, divided by the number of packs you smoke, and that gets you your $222. The bottom number is the portion of that you ignore when you make your smoking choices. Okay? If our model that the utility you get from smoking a pack of cigarettes is equal to B minus beta C, if this model is good enough, right, to capture these choices that you make, then we can say that we have an estimate of C, we have estimates of beta from various places, and we can say that the part of this long-term risk of losing your life that you are willing to sacrifice, that you will sacrifice, that you will ignore because of beta, is 1050. Okay? So which suggests that we should put a tax of $10.50 on a pack of cigarettes. Nope, we just eliminate irrational smoking. Okay? So I think I'm going to show you that on the next slide. Yeah. All right, here's a smoker. This is our model. So you can think of this as all smokers or one smoker, it doesn't matter. In a minute, we'll become all smokers, but for now, you can think of it as one smoker. Okay? So what I have here is I have the behavioral demand curve and the rational demand curve. Now keep in mind, I'm saying that B varies. Okay? So the way you might want to think about this is that the value that you're willing to, the value that your willingness to pay for any given cigarette, right, is B minus beta C, where B varies from some high number to some low number, and that's going to give you a downward sloping line, right, where this is B minus beta C for some very high B, right, high B, and then there are going to be some cigarettes. And so what you're going to do is that you're going to want to, right, and then there's going to be a price in here somewhere based on a supply